All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. That sound means this part of the show is brought to you by the GCI guys at Realty One Group and my man Lee Goldberg, former TV sportscaster, now wants to be on your home team. Buying, selling, or renting, talk to the GCI guys. They'll save you money. And get this, if you're a hero, veteran, military, police, fire, teacher, or nurse, you're getting $2,000 back at closing, especially if you work in the hospitality or casino industry. Give them a call. It's the GCI guys, 702-902-3029. Call or text Lee right now, 702-902-3029. Also, check them out at thegciguys.com. By the way, we are monitoring breaking news happening right now. James O'Neill, who is the New York Police Commissioner, is speaking to the media in regards to the Eric Garner case, talking about the fate of the officer in that case. You remember that, where Eric Garner got the chokehold and tragically lost his life. We are going to monitor this. The press conference is going on right now, so we'll give you the latest. We are talking about gun control, gun violence, mass shootings, the president's response, Republicans getting this memo, acting like cowards, talking about, well, how do we make ourselves look better and blame the left instead of doing what's right? And we're taking your phone calls at 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation, 257-5396. Mike, you're next. Thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. What's on your mind?
What's up, Mike?
Hey, good morning, Brian. Good morning, JD. How you guys doing today?
Doing good, man.
Doing very well.
What's up, Mike?
Sorry I didn't call in sooner, man. It's the first time I could get on your show. Well, I really believe that we were living in a post-racist America with the majority of white Americans voted for Obama, and I really didn't appreciate seeing the new Black Panthers at voting booths coercing and intimidating white voters as they came into the voting booths. I thought that was outrageous, and
my response to that,
I believe that America does not have a racism problem. I think it's fabricated, my friends.
You don't think there's any racism in this country? Is that what you're about?
No.
Brian, there's a difference between
racism in this country, but in my opinion, the KKK and associated militia clans that are into white power are 1% of 1%. They're a total minority. And like the Russian,
okay, so Mike, hold on. We're getting into
didn't work, so now they're jumping to racism.
Mike, we're getting into a lot of different subjects here. First of all, would you say that to the families of the 22 people that lost their lives at Walmart? And number two, you're talking about these Black Panthers. First of all, I don't condone that. I don't condone anyone, by the way, going to a voting booth and putting pressure on anyone to vote. But it's not like there were African Americans across the country forcing people to vote for Barack Obama. Were there certain situations where there were Black Panthers at some of the voting booths? Sure, but I certainly didn't see it in Las Vegas. I didn't hear about that in Nevada. And if it did happen, okay, then that's wrong. But what does that have to do with what's going on right now? The bottom line, Mike, is that hate crimes are up 18% since Donald Trump took office. That is not a stat that I'm just blowing smoke, okay? That is a fact. These white supremacy is a problem. Is it the only problem in America? No. Is every white person a racist? No. Nobody's saying that.
Is it the biggest problem in America, right, Brian?
No,
it's not.
But it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
No, but let me tell you something. As a white person, I am watching my back more than ever now.
I don't know what that means.
But wait, Mike, you started this call. Mike,
everybody is accusing me of being a racist, and I'm not. I have 5 different races on my construction crew. Not now, but I did. But I've never been a racist. My family hasn't been a racist, and I just don't appreciate the push-off, the general push-off that everybody that's white is racist. I'm not buying it.
Mike, you started the phone call off, though, by saying we are in a post-racist society, which is I would absolutely, positively disagree with. And you're saying that, there's people accusing you of being a racist. So you personally are saying that you feel that there's people out there that are calling you personally a racist? What? I don't understand.
What I'm saying is that now all eyes are on me because I'm in the prime white racist zone. I'm middle-aged. I'm semi-successful. I'm happy.
What? Whoa. Time out. You said you're in the prime white racist zone.
Right.
You have 3 white guys that are sitting in the studio right now. I, don't consider myself being in a prime white anything. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?
I kind of relate to Mike a little bit. There was after all these shootings took place, there was a there was an African American guy on my Facebook, and he posted a meme, and it said that white people are terrorists. And I said, hey, am I a terrorist? He said,
well, so what?
He
so
said,
you have one nut job.
Yeah. He said, I don't know. Well, just like you've got 330 million people in the United States of America, there's obviously some racists here. There's obviously some racists.
Yes.
There's obviously some crazy people. There's obviously some mentally unstable people.
Do you guys remember Robert Reich?
Absolutely.
No more room for white workers in America. Do you remember he said that?
You really think that people aren't getting hired in this country because they're white, Mike? You can't possibly believe that.
No. What I'm saying is...
Well, what did Mr. X say last week, verbatim?
It's the fact that the Carpenters Union is extinct. It went extinct by developers and the government using over-the-border boys and the cartel. The cartel took over the construction
Mike,
industry.
I want to ask you a very... I understand, Mike. I want to ask you a very, what I think is a serious and straightforward question. If you're born in this country right now, would you like to be born black or white? Please answer the question honestly.
Question.
Answer the question honestly, Mike. Right now, if you had an opportunity, you could have any skin color you want. What would it be?
You can't really answer that question.
Let him answer the question, JD.
In my opinion, it doesn't matter because opportunity...
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
It
absolutely
matters.
matters.
It doesn't matter. Just answer the question.
We can't have four people screaming at the same time. Mike,
the question has to be based. You have to consider the circumstances.
There are no circumstances.
Just
right now.
I actually, to be honest with you, yes. I think there's an advantage of being born white.
Okay, there you go. Mike, I appreciate the phone call. I got to get to some other calls.
That's all she wrote,
yeah.
Okay?
I mean, you would rather be born white, so don't you play this victim that everyone thinks you're a racist and everybody's out to get you. I appreciate the honesty in your answer, Mike, but that's what I was trying to get to. There is no question in this country right now, if you are white, you have advantages that minorities do not have, period. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish I could just say it like it is and say, listen, everyone's the same here, equal. Yep. But it's not the case. And if he wants to call up and other people want to call up and play the victim because they're white, that is ridiculous. That is utterly ridiculous, and I have no idea where he is coming from. What do you guys say?
Absolutely. He started the phone call off, like I said, by saying we're in a post-racist society, as if, we don't have any more major issues when it comes to racism. Basically, I think what his point is trying to make. And you nailed it on the head, Brian. He came at it, and he gave the perspective of, woe is me as a white guy right now because we're under fire, as if, we are at some type of disadvantage being a white person in America right now because of reverse racism, and it's ridiculous.
His answer spoke volumes.
Yes.
We do have some breaking news that we want to share with everybody. As we said, we are following the Eric Garner situation where there's a press conference in New York. John Schaefer just came in, news anchor here at KDWN. He's going to be joining us here with more information on this in a few minutes. But the latest that just came out, and this is a very interesting development, the New York, the NYPD police officer will be fired. He is going to lose his job. Now, is that enough? A lot of people think that this officer should have been charged with a crime. He never. But the officer who put Eric Garner into a chokehold is losing his job. Now, does that mean he can't get a job elsewhere? No, but it ain't going to be in New York City. That's for sure. And trust me, I do not feel sorry for him. Even if you are resisting arrest, and you could make the argument that Eric Garner was resisting and he wasn't cooperating, he was selling cigarettes outside a store. He didn't have a weapon on him. Make no mistake about it, he was not posing a threat to those officers. Now, I do have another story coming up in hour number 2 where I will take the officer's side, where a 19-year-old was shot in the back, and I'm going to tell you why I'm taking the officer's side in this. So people rush to judgment. But again, the NYPD officer is going to be fired. They just made the announcement. James O'Neill, who is the New York police commissioner, that officer will not be working the streets in New York City. That's probably better for his safety as well, by the way. I would not want to be an officer there after that situation. Let's take another phone call. Let's go to Marge. Marge calling into the GCI Guys hotline, which is 257-5396. Marge, how's it going?
Good. My dog loves the doorbell because she starts barking every time it comes on the radio.
Well, I'm glad your dog enjoys the show as well. Listen, if a dog tunes into this station, that counts for ratings. Okay,
so
okay. Absolutely that counts. We have more dog listeners on this show than anybody else. We're very proud to say that. All right, go ahead, Marge. What's on your mind?
Several things. Number one, those 3 that were stopped over the weekend kind of proves the point. I'm glad that people called in about that and gave them the tips, but all of them, it seemed, from what I read very quickly, either had a mass number of weapons and or ammo.
Right.
And that goes to the point of I still don't understand why we can't track that if people are starting to load up, because most of these people when they buy things like that, especially the ammo, they don't just buy one series. They buy a lot. And I think that something could be done as far as just tracking people and saying, so why do you do it? Why do you need all of that?
I agree.
So that's another way to stop, you know.
I agree. That's a good point.
As far as the Colorado situation with those officers, I mean, they found a gun on the guy that they killed.
Yeah, I want to save that until hour number 2. But I got to be honest with you, we are going to talk a lot about this case because I think it's a perfect example of how people rush to judgment. If a white officer kills an African American, it must have been race, and I'm telling you that's not the case here. But we'll get to that story, Marge. What else you got for us?
And as far as racism, I mean, I am definitely white. I'm not a racist, and I have to say that in my lifetime, I've had some very nice promotions out of black bosses.
Yeah,
so
that's nice to hear.
You know, that just disputes everything as far as, you know, white people and blacks and everything else that goes along with that these days.
That's nice to hear, Marge, and I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that, and the idea that white people are racism against white people. I'm sorry. Maybe there are some specific cases for that. There are some haters out there, but the majority just don't see it.
Colleges right now, there's quotas that take place that colleges have to have a specific amount of minorities. That's racism. That's discrimination. That exists, and it has existed for 30 years, Brian.
Well, it's affirmative action.
That's affirmative action.
Is.
I wouldn't call affirmative action racism.
No, it's not racism.
I mean, if it gives opportunity to one race over another race, and one race is enriching themselves and the other race is not, how is that not racist?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not. They're not looking at someone based on their color.
But they are, though, because they have a quota predicated on their color legitimately.
The reason why
that's the only reason why.
I do not agree with affirmative action. I've been very clear on that. But with that being said, the reason why that is put in place.
But advantages are advantages,
reasons.
Brian.
I understand that. But if you have someone that has an A- average, here's where I am for affirmative action. If you have two students, hold on, let me finish. One white person who what's wrong? Why are you I'm trying to answer your question. Well, what do you want to go ahead? Say it. I'm not trying to get you angry.
Answer the question.
Okay. This is where I do agree with affirmative action. I thought you look like you wanted to chime in on something. I'm just answering your question. If you have a white person or Caucasian that has an A- average and an African American that has an A- average, I think you choose the African American, and here is why. Because in the history of this country, minorities have not had the same opportunities that white people have had. Period. And that's why affirmative action is put in place. Here's where I disagree with affirmative action. I believe you have a Caucasian that has a certain grade point average that's much higher, not even close to a minority, and you choose that minority over that person that is white. I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that. And that's why, as a whole, I'm against affirmative action. But I think when you have two students that are around the same, I think you go with the minority, because as a whole in this country, you look at the history, minorities have not had the same opportunity. That's where I agree with it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. What'd you want to say? You look like you wanted to chime in with something. No?
No, I was going to say that if you're going to, if you had a choice between being a African American and honestly, I'm so tired of hearing African American, black, white, Caucasian. It just annoys me at this point. We're all Americans. We live in the United States of America. Our race is second before our country.
That's all fine and dandy.
It's not just fine and dandy.
But there's still racism out there.
Okay, fine, and there's racism from every single color to every single color. It's not just white to black and black to white, et cetera,
that's true.
et cetera.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think it exists across the spectrum of all races. But if you had a choice between being a black or an African American born into a middle class family or a Caucasian born into a poor family, which choice would you have?
Well, that wasn't the question that I asked.
No, but that's why you have to consider you have to consider circumstance.
Right, but
advantage is advantage.
Right, but that wasn't the question that I asked. I just asked a regular, or hypothetically, if you're both born into poor families. That was just a hypothetical question that I asked. And the reason why I asked that caller that is because he made it seem like because he's white, he's being discriminated against.
Say you're born into a poor family in small town Iowa, and you're white. and you're born into a poor family in inner city Baltimore, and you're black.
I'm just trying to understand the point you're trying to make. What are you saying?
One race is exposed to methamphetamines, the other race is exposed to crack cocaine. One race is exposed to gangs, the other one's exposed to different things.
Listen, I just said
the circumstances are totally different.
I just said I'm against affirmative action, but to sit here for me to say that African Americans and that whites have gone through just as much trouble in the history of this country as African Americans would be a flat out lie.
Well, obviously that would be a lie.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand what you're trying. I'm confused. Chris, help me out here.
I'm confused as to, I think you guys aren't really looking at the definition of racism from a negative standpoint, right? When we think about racism, what JD's talking about when he says something like affirmative action he thinks is racism, it's not something that's a negative connotation, right? It's not something where there have been negative effects. When we think about racism, right, you think about bad stuff that's happened to African Americans and to Mexicans and to people of other races, at the behest of white people, right, or at the behest of other people. And what you said, JD, is completely correct when you say that there are people. Look, there are racists that are of every color. There's a famous, the stand-up comic Chris Rock when he talks about who are the most racist people in America. It's old black men. I mean, there's people of all races,
absolutely,
that are racist. But the fact of the matter is that we have to speak in general terms when you're talking about in the United States of America what has been the most detrimental to a certain race, whether it's African Americans, whether it's Hispanics and people that are not white. Okay, it's been negative, right? It's been a negative thing. So that's the way you have to approach it, and that's why affirmative action. To boil down what you pointed out, Brian, is the definition of affirmative action was brought about because of institutional racism, right? Because of the advantages that whites have had in America over minorities. So it's much like what reparations would be if reparations took place. What's the motivation to have reparations? It's because because there's been a wrongdoing, right? Or it's because minorities have been at a disadvantage. It's the same thing with affirmative action. There's a method to the madness. And a reason why affirmative action has been put into place is because they have been at a disadvantage for years.
Look, make no mistake about it. Racism is horrible no matter which direction it comes from. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter if you're black. I don't care what your skin color is. Racism is wrong when you look at somebody based on gender, based on sexuality. By the way, we should tell that to our Vice President, Mike Pence, who looks at people differently because they're gay. We should call all people out. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what type of religion you look at somebody differently because of their sexuality or because of their gender. Okay, look, I'm just going to call him out for it because I think it's important. And he'll have time to come back in studio and defend himself. But that is Steve Sanchez, who does a show here 6 to 8 p.m., and I invited him in studio, and I know he's not a Barack Obama fan. I know there's a lot of people out there that are not Barack Obama fans. He referred to Barack Obama as a sissy on his show. And then after calling Barack Obama a sissy, referred to him as a woman. I heard it. It was on his show. It is indefensible. That is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. People need to stop talking like that. You have to stop talking about someone and degrade them down because of their gender. That's just as bad as skin color as far as I'm concerned. You lose all credibility when you say things like that. Describing all women as sissies, it's disgusting. It's horrible.
And Brian, look, I listened to the segment, and look, I have disagreements with Steve when it comes to his approach, especially because he tends to be someone who likes to take things to the extreme, right? Mm-hmm. The left, they want open borders. The left, they want to take all of your guns. The left, has an approach that is unredeemable and is completely, they're not people of God. And, he has that approach. And on this issue, though, with respect to him, it's more about, he talks about the situation regarding his belief in religion and his thoughts on, and look, he has a very strong opinion when it comes to that because he's a religious guy. And so, and he tried to actually call you out when it came to, your faith and what it is that you believe from a religious standpoint.
I'm not a religious person, but whether you believe in God, whoever your God is, does your God want you to look at people differently based on gender? Does your God want you to look at people differently based on sexuality? Because if they do, maybe you should choose another God. I'll leave it at that. We got to take a break. But,
but quickly, he was bringing up the Bible and talking about women in the Bible, and it was extremely sexist. I was listening to it, and look, I'm obviously not a woman, but it was something that offended me given his perspective on that. I thought it was kind of out of line, to be honest with you.
I agree. We'll take a quick break. I'll be back right after this. When we come back, why are people going after police officers? Well, a police officer shot an African-American in the back, a 19-year-old. Why I'm defending the officer. We'll talk about this case when we come back. You're listening to the Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, Chris Wynn in studio on a Monday. I want to get to this story, and then we're going to take some calls on this, and I'll give you my thoughts, and I want to get your opinions on this. 19-year-old Devon Bailey of Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was shot and killed by a Colorado Springs police officer August 3rd. Body camera footage the day of the shooting. Bailey was running away from Sergeant Alan Van Land and Officer Blake Evanson when he was shot. Shouldn't say everyone, but just about all the African Americans in that town have been marching, calling it a murder. Here's what they don't want you to know. Bailey had just committed a robbery with a gun. Police officers questioned this kid in the street because they said he matched the same description as a phone call they just got. He's standing there with his friend. Police officer asked him to put his hands up. And then, keep in mind, police officers are thinking, oh, this kid might have a weapon. They probably just committed a robbery. So he doesn't comply. He runs from the officers. You could clearly see in the video, his hand reaches down towards his waistband. He has a gun on him. What do police do? They shoot him in the back. He dies. He had a gun on him. Now, I'm going to give you my opinions when we come back from the break of how I feel about people in society. Not to say that police officers should be judge, jury, and executioner. I want to tell you a little bit about how I feel about someone that robs somebody at gunpoint, is dumb enough to run from the police, and then reaches for his waistband. Could have been for a gun, could have not been for a gun, but we're going to talk about that when we come back. I'll tell you what I'm sick and tired of. I'm sick and tired of people rushing to judgment because a white officer kills an African-American. People like Jesse Jackson, like Al Sharpton, automatically assume, without knowing all the evidence in this case, that it was a race thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I'll give you my thoughts on this when we come back, I do not believe this shooting had anything to do with race, and I think it had everything to do with a moron who was a criminal and a felon who just committed a robbery at gunpoint and then was dumb enough to run away from the police with a gun on him. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.